Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we begin our lesson by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity. And we pray that Allah make this lesson a reason where our sins are forgiven, our prayers are answered. And may Allah constantly bless us and give His mercy. And protect us from all trials, difficulties, and tribulations in dunya and akhirah. And may Allah bless us with the understanding of deen and bless us with husnul khatima. Ameen ya rabbal alameen. So today, inshallah ta'ala, we will continue from where we stopped in our book of fiqh. That is the book of Umdatusaalik, in English, the Reliance of the traveler. And in our last lesson, and that was, I believe, in the month of Sha'ban and before we enter Ramadan, we have reached the chapter where the author and he mentioned Babu Asbabil Hadath. And in this particular book, and he mentioned this particular chapter as Asbabul Hadath, because some books of fiqh and it differs in the name and name of this chapter. Some books and he mentioned Nawaqidul Wudu, the things that nullifies the wudu. But here the author and he mentioned Asbab al Hadath, yani the reasons of al Hadath. Yani basically he's referring to the nullification of the ablution. What are the things that nullify the ablution? So he mentioned Wahiya Arba'a. Although I believe I have covered some of this, but inshallah, and we just starting from the beginning. So in Madhhab Imam Shafi'i, it's very simple. If a person only asks what are the things that nullify ablution, we say there are four things. Wahiya Arba'a. So he mentioned Ahaduha al-khariju min qubulin aw duburin. Anything that exit the private parts, the front and the back, nullifies ablution. So regardless what it is, whether it is something that is a filth or not a filth, anything that exit in a form of liquid, in a form of gas, in a form of solid, it nullifies the ablution. أو ثقبة تحت صورة مع انسداد المخرج المعتاد. Yani if a person makes a hole, or there is an operation anywhere, the filth comes out from a tube, for example, if it is below the navel, then it nullifies the ablution. But if it's on top of the navel, then it does not nullify the ablution. Now, this is the difference. That is why the author mentioned أو ثقبة تحت صورة, or there is a hole that is below the navel. مع انسداد المخرج المعتاد. Yani why is this done? And if this is a situation anywhere, the private parts were sealed. A person having an illness that he is unable to remove his bowels. So a hole was being done. So he mentioned if this is below the navel, then anything that exit from this tube, it nullifies the ablution. Ainan or rehan, whether it is a solid ain or it is in a form of gas, rih or wind. Mu'tadan aw nadiran, whether it is something that is usual, like urine, feces, aw nadiran, or something that is not usual, like what he mentioned, that kadudatin wa hasatin. Sometimes a person have a certain type of sickness, worms come out from his private parts, or these stones, small stones that come out from his private part. Does this nullify the ablution? Yes, this nullify the ablution, even though this is something that is that is not common. Worms coming out from the private parts is something that is not common. But if it happens, then it nullifies the ablution. Illa al-mani. So Madhhab Imam Shafi'i, and we mentioned that mani does not invalidate the ablution. Mani here is the sperm. So if a sperm comes out and it does not invalidate the ablution, فَإِنَّهُ يُوجِبُ الْغُسْلِ, or verily sperm yani it makes any bathing any compulsory, yani a person has to bathe the obligatory bath. Wala yanqudul wudu, but sperm does not nullify the ablution. So I hope any it is clear. So basically, the author is saying everything that comes out any from the private parts invalidate any the wudu except any for sperm, except any for sperm. And in a situation anywhere a person does any an operation where a hole any is being made under any the navel, then this particular hole takes any the ruling any of the private part. So anything that comes out any from it, it is considered to be nullifying any the ablution. Then he mentioned wasuratu dhalika ayyanama mumkinan maq'adahu fayahtalimu. Then the author he mentioned as though any someone and he might be asking, how can that be possible? That if a person ejaculate any sperm and he is still in the state any of wudu, how any can we imagine any situation? So he said wasuratu dhalika, say this example any of the situation, ayyanama mumakkinan, a person sleeps and he sleeps any in a way that his back any is firm any on the ground. So for example, like how I'm sitting right now, how I'm sitting any, if I sleep in this position, if I have any ablution, my ablution any is not any nullified. This will be explained later. After this, and we speak about this. So there is a difference any between the position any of my sitting. If I'm sitting like this, meaning there is no chance any air can come out any from my body, then my ablution any is still valid. But if I'm lying down, then my ablution becomes any invalid because of the possibility any that any form any of wind any can come out. So if a person sleeps any in this position and then he ejaculates sperm, if he ejaculates sperm, this is an example that we say that a person has wudu, but he has to bathe the obligatory bath any because of the ejaculation any of sperm. So here, ejaculation of sperm does not nullify any the ablution, and this is any possible. If a person has a wet dream, for example, while sitting down, he sleeps any in the state of wudu, and he has any a wet dream. So when he wakes up, his wudu is still valid. His wudu is still valid, but he cannot perform any of the prayers. He has any to bathe the obligatory bath. Aw yanzura fayanzil. Another situation, and he will be he has ablution and he sees something that arouse him, and he ejaculate. So he still and he has the ablution. Fayunzil. Yunzil here meaning any ejaculate. Wa illa falau jama'a aw nama muttaji'an fa anzala intaqada bil massi wan nawm. But he said that if a person does any the sexual intercourse any jama'a aw nama muttaji'an, yani he sleeps any lying down, muttaji'an. So if he sleeps any muttaji'an, khalas, and we say the wudu becomes invalid, not because of the ejaculation any of sperm, but because any of lying down. Fa anzala, then he ejaculate in that situation, and in two situations the author mentioned. Number one, and he has sexual any intercourse. Number two, he sleeps any while lying down. Fa anzala, and he ejaculate. Intaqada bil lamsi wan nawm. So his wudu becomes nullified. Nullified any because of what? Because of what? Because any of touching any of man and woman. Because any of touching, his wudu any becomes invalidated. Any in the example any of sexual intercourse, and his wudu becomes invalidated any because any of sleeping. Sleeping any invalidates any the wudu if he sleeps any in that position as what I mentioned. So this is any number one. Reason number one, the things that invalidate ablution, anything that comes out from the private parts. Number two, you say asani zawalu aqlihi, yani a person loss of consciousness. Loss of consciousness, whether loss of consciousness any because any of becoming any insane, or because any of fainting, or because of a person in a state any of drunkenness, or sleeping. Sleeping as what we mentioned, we will mention any later. Sleeping, there is a condition to it. So loss of consciousness invalidate the ablution. Loss of consciousness invalidate the ablution, including sleeping. Including sleeping. So you say illa naum qa'idan mumakkinan maq'aduhu min al-ard. That's what I mentioned. Except that sleeping, if a person sleeps like this is mumakkin maq'aduhu min al-ard. So you say this is mumakkin. Yani sleeping that is mumakkin. Mumakkin any meaning that his back and is firm any on the ground. So that no possibility any that air can escape. So if a person sits any like this, his body is pressuring any his private part. So nothing can escape. So if he sleeps any like this is what we say mumakkinan maqaduhu min al-ard. Fayahtalimu. Afwan. Wa sawa'un ar-rakibu wal mustanidu walau bi shay'in walau uzila la saqata. Wa ghayruhuma. So he said that regardless whether if a person and he is riding, wal mustanid, yani if a person and he is riding and what you call it, or on a vehicle, but his back and he is firm and he on the ground. So the ground here yani refers any to his vehicle any right now. So meaning any the author and he is saying as long as there is no possibility any of any filth any that can come out any from his private part, his wudu yani is still any valid. This is any with regard any to sleeping. Sawa'an ar-rakib wal mustanid. Mustanid is a person any who is laying any on something. Walau li shay'in law uzila la saqata. Like what I'm doing right now. And if this wall any is not behind me, then I would fall. So now I am sitting down and my back any is laying any on the wall like this. It doesn't matter. As long as what we mentioned as long as the back any is firm any on the ground. Likewise, if a person is on a vehicle, for example, a person is inside a car or on a motorbike for example, and his back is firm on the motorbike or on the seat of the car, it carries the same ruling. So the author is saying it is not necessarily that it must be on the ground, because sometimes people can be in the vehicles, sometimes people can be somewhere else, or to laying on something. That is also possible. So as long as this is the situation, then sleeping does not invalidate wudu. But if other than this situation, then sleeping invalidates the wudu. So I hope it is clear, inshallah. So he give examples and he said, فَلَوْ نَامَ مُمَكِّنًا فَزَالَتْ أَلْيَتَاهُ قَبْلَ انْتِبَاهِهِ انْتَقَضَى. So he said that if a person begins by sleeping mumakkinan, yani in a way that as what we mentioned. For example, if a person initially he was sitting like this mumakkin, so he's sleeping like this. But when he wakes up, when he looks at himself, he is lying down. So he remember when I was sitting down when I slept. He remember. But when he woke up and he found himself lying down. So now we need a question: does he have wudu or doesn't have wudu? So do we take into consideration in the beginning or the ending? So here the author mentioned we take into consideration his state at the end. So when he woke up from his sleep, what is his situation right now? So if I sleep like this and I woke up and my body is like this, so now I know that my wudu is valid, because this is mumakkin mak'an. But if I wake up, one of my feet, for example, is up, then I know that this is a situation where my wudu becomes invalidated. And this it can happen usually when people listen to the khutbah. So I notice sometimes people, when they listen to the khutbah, they are laying down their back on the wall, on the pillar of the masjid. So while the khutbah is being said, so this person and he sleeps. So initially and he sleeps and like this. And then while he is sleeping, he lifts any one of his leg. He lifts any one of his leg. So now any he's not, there's no mumakin, there's no tamkin. So why any? Because now we say any that the private parts are exposed. So when the private parts are exposed and he sleeps any in that position, the wudu any becomes any invalid. And if he wakes up and he saw his position like that, then it is wajib any upon him to take wudu, because now any his wudu becomes invalidated. So here any the author any mention, he said fazalat ilyatahu qabla intibahihi. Fazalat ilyata. Ilyata in the Arabic language any meaning our what you call it, the back part, what our the bottom part of our back. This is called ilya. This is called ilya. So he said law uzilat ilyatah, yani meaning yani he's sitting in a position yani is no more mumakkin. For example, yani he lifts any his leg or he lies down. So now any he is lying down. He is not depending any on his bottom part. So he say intaqada, the wudu becomes invalid. Aw ba'dahu aw ma'ahu. So now any we have any of you any situation. Just now any I mentioned that when a person, when he wakes up any from his sleep and he saw his situation any that he is lying down any, for example. Now any we say that his wudu any becomes invalid. But sometimes somebody any inform him that while he is sleeping, he lift up any his leg any, for example, in the situation of a person who hears any the khutbah. So initially he was sitting like this, and then he lifts any one of his leg. So this is while any he is sleeping, and then he moves any his leg any again, and back any to the sitting any position. So in this situation also any we say his ablution becomes any invalidated. So here any the author any mention a few situations when he realized after any he's sleeping, or before. So he say ba'dahu wa qablahu. He say aw ba'dahu. Before this he say qabla intibahi. And before he wakes up, he's sitting in a position and he changes. We say this wudu any becomes any invalid. And after any he wakes up, ba'dahu, he realizes any his sleeping position has changed. Again any the wudu any becomes invalid. Aw ma'ahu, while any he is waking up. While any he is waking up, he realized any that he is sleeping in a position and he has changed. Aw shakka, or he is in a state any of doubt. All these are situations. So basically the author is saying sometimes when a person sleeps, when he wake up any from his sleep, so the question any is always when does this change any happens? Yani when does this change any happens? Does it any happen any while he is sleeping, or before he wakes up, or after any he wakes up, or any he is any in a state any of shak, and he is in a state of doubt? Is it when I was sleeping and does my situation any my wudu any becomes any invalidated any because any of my position, or it does not any becomes any invalidated? He becomes any doubtful. Then the author any mentioned aw saqatat yaduhu ala al-ardi wa huwa na'imun mumkinun. And then while any he's sleeping and he fell. So meaning any he exposed any the private parts. Aw na'asa wa huwa ghayru mumakkin wa huwa yasma' wa la yafham. Or he is any in a state any of sleepiness. He can hear but he doesn't any understand. So all these any are the situations. Aw shakka hal nama aw na'asa aw hal nama mumakkinan aw ghayra mumakkin fala yantaqid. So in this any situation, his wudu is not invalidated, because any this is all based any on doubt. Unless any I mentioned earlier that if a person informs him that while any he is sleeping, his wudu any has been invalidated. Yani if a person, for example, while he is sleeping, he lies down, and then somebody pull him back to his sleeping any position. So when he wakes up and he thought that he wakes up in this sitting position. But if somebody were to inform him based on conviction, and a person that we can trust, then his wudu becomes invalidated. But if a person wakes up and he saw himself in this position, his wudu is validated. And if he does not know what happens before, that is forgiven. So here the author mentioned, as long as when he wakes up and he saw his position, where was he? So if he is in a sitting position where the wudu is not invalidated, then he has ablution. Even though he has doubt, there is a possibility. For example, I lie down while I'm sleeping. There is a possibility. My wudu becomes invalidated before I wake up from my sleep. And then also the issue of sleepiness. A person is in doubt. Did I sleep or not sleep? Is it because of sleepiness? If it is because of sleepiness, it does not invalidate any wudu. Sleepiness does not invalidate wudu. So there is a difference between becoming sleepy and sleeping itself. So what is the difference? If a person is sleepy, he can hear but he cannot understand. When a person is sleeping, he cannot hear anything. There is loss of his consciousness. So there is a difference. So if a person is in doubt, then did I sleep or not sleep? So we say that the wudu is still valid. The wudu is still valid because he is in this based on doubt. So doubt doesn't have any effect on any ruling. So let us get this again. So he say falau nama mumakkinan. So now the author again in the beginning he is speaking about a person who sleeps mumakkinan, like what I'm doing sitting now. Just imagine if I'm sleeping. So my wudu is not valid. My wudu is still valid. My wudu is still valid. Fazalat ilyatahu qabla intibahihi. Intaqada. So this is the first situation. So if he wakes up and he saw that he's not in this sitting position anymore, his wudu becomes invalidated. Aw ba'dahu, aw ma'ahu, aw shakka, aw saqatat. All this any other situation. All these are the situations. So he said, if fazalat ilyatahu qabla intibahi, if before he wakes up from his sleep, meaning at the point when he wakes up from his sleep, he found out that he's no more in this sitting position. This becomes invalidated. But in a situation, he said, aw ba'dahu, after he wakes up, then there is no effect. After he wakes up, the sitting position changed. Now he wakes up already. No issue. Aw ma'ahu, or while waking up. His sitting position changed. So this does not give effect. Because why? Because he is in consciousness now. So after he wakes up from his sleep, he is in consciousness. So it doesn't give any effect. Likewise, while waking up, his position changed. So here the author is speaking about the changing of position. So we have to understand what he's saying. Aw shakka, or he is in doubt whether his position changed or does not change. Aw saqatat yaduhu alal ard, his hand fell down while he is sleeping. Aw na'asa, his sleepiness is what we mentioned earlier. Wa huwa ghayru mumakkin, and even if he is not firm on the ground, his back is not firm on the ground based on sleepiness. Wa huwa yasma' wa la yafham, that is the definition of sleepiness. He hears and he does not understand. And then he mentioned aw shakka hal nama aw na'asa. If he's in a doubt whether he's sleeping or he's sleepy. Aw hal nama mumakkinan aw ghayra mumakkin. He's in doubt whether he's while he's sleeping in a state of mumakkin or not mumakkin. Fala yantaqid. So all the situations the wudu is still valid. The wudu is still valid. So this is point number 2. Loss of consciousness. So other than sleeping, we mentioned that becoming insane and fainting. So I hope it is clear, inshallah. If you have any questions, you can ask later. I will address those questions regarding this. regarding any what? If anyone doesn't understand, no issue. Any I can repeat it again. But I hope any it is clear, any inshallah. Number 3, he said, Asalisu iltiqa'u shay'in wa in qalla min basharatay rajulin wa mra'atin ajnabiyain. Number 3, and is with regard to touching of the opposite sex. Touching, skin to skin. Ajnabiyain, yani meaning there are no blood ties, including husband and wife. So touching skin to skin invalidates any the ablution. Walau bi ghairi shahwa, even though there is no shahwa. Even though there is no shahwa. No sexual arousal. Wa qasd, no intention. Hatta lisan, even yani the tongue to tongue, or tongue any to the skin. Does it invalidate the ablution? Yes, it invalidates the ablution. Wal ashal, a paralyzed body part. Usually a paralyzed any body part doesn't have any feeling. Even so, the wudu becomes any invalid. Was za'id, an additional body part. Some people they have additional body parts. Usually this additional body parts also any there is no arousal. Does it invalidate the wudu? Yes, it invalidates the wudu. Illa sinnan wa dhufran. As for teeth any and nails, it does not invalidate the ablution, because this is not considered to be skin. This is not considered to be skin to skin. And there is no shahwa. Also, with regard to the teeth and the nails. Wa udwan maqtu'an, and a body part that is cut off. If a person, for example, he saw a hand that is cut off, a hand of a lady, for example, and then he touched that hand. Does it invalidate the wudu? No, it does not invalidate the wudu, because now it has been cut off from the from the body. Wa yanqudu harimun wa mayyitun. Harim is an old person. So if an old person, and if, for example, like if for men, for example, when we look at a lady that is 90 years old, this is harim. A person that has reached an old age to such an extent there is no sexual arousal, and when a person look at her, there's no sexual arousal due to old age. Likewise, for men, a lady and a man that has reached 90 years of age, 100 years of age, say this is harim. So if we were to touch him, for example, or touch her, then does it invalidate the wudu? Yes, it invalidates the wudu. Because some people might be thinking, but mashallah, this is an old man, there is no feeling, I got no feeling. It's not any about whether you have feeling or no feeling. It's about what Allah mentioned in the Quran. So these are our fuqaha things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks about wudu, He mentioned wa in lamastumun nisa, yani if you touch the woman. So Al-Imam Shafi'i mentioned touching invalidate the wudu, regardless whether the woman is young or old. Wa mayyit, a dead body, it does not invalidate the dead person, the wudu is still valid for the dead person. So when the dead person when the person pass away, we take ablution for the dead body. But if another person were to touch that body, it does not invalidate the ablution of the dead person. La mahramun wa tiflun la yushtaha fil aadah. But with regard to those who have blood ties with us, then the ablution becomes invalidated. The ablution does not become invalidated. So mahram here, for example, if our daughters is our mahram, basically those whom we cannot marry. Mahram in simple terms meaning the ones that you cannot marry, like our daughters. Our daughters what you call it, shake our hands. It does not invalidate the ablution. Likewise, our mothers, our aunties, our uncles. So these are our mahram. These are the people that we cannot get married to. So this does not invalidate the wudu. وَلَا طِفْلٌ لَا يُشْتَهَى فِي الْعَادَةِ. And children, small children, لَا يُشْتَهَى يعني في العادة. Okay, this is the thing that I think many people are asking. With regard to children, here the author mentioned that the wudu is not nullified. And when a person touch a child. But how do we ascertain that this particular child can invalidate my ablution or not invalidate my ablution? So we have to underline this. This is very important. So the first thing I would like to say, it is not based on age. It is not based on age, because children differs from one child to another child. So the author here, he mentioned la yushtaha fil ada. Yani usually when we look at this particular child, it does not have any sexual arousal. There is no any sexual arousal. So if you were to touch these children, our wudu does not becomes invalidated. So how do we ascertain? We have to look at the child that is in front of us. Whether this particular child is too small, or this particular child has reached an age that can arouse the sexual arousal. So if this particular child can arouse someone, then it is haram to touch that particular child. Now it becomes haram. It is not permissible. So the thing is, there is no specific age. So what our scholars do is ihtiyat. Yani they to play safe. To play safe. Sometimes they say that a child that is 7 years and above, it is better to avoid. It is better to avoid shaking their hands for example. Because children differs from usually in that particular age, the age of tamyiz. The age of tamyiz, a child has reached an age that he is able to understand things. Sometimes some cultures, for example, the formation of the body is faster. Sometimes when you look at a particular place, when the child reaches 8 years of age, and you think that the child maybe is 12 years old, but actually is only 8 years old. So do we take ages as a benchmark? No. And we take at the formation of the body of the body of the child. In some countries, for example, 7 years of age, what you call it, the wudu becomes invalidated because of the formation of the body. But in some many cultures, it's different. But it is best to play. It is best to play safe. If a child reach an age of tamyiz, that is the beginning. That is the beginning where the ablution can be invalidated. Then the author mentioned فَلَوْ شَكَّ أَلَمَسَ إِمْرَأَةً أَوْ رَجُلًا أَوْ شَعْرًا أَوْ بَشَرَةً أَوْ أَجْنَبِيَّةً أَمْ مَحْرَمًا لَمْ يَنْتَقِدْ. If a person is in doubt, whether he touches a man or a woman, or he touches the hair or the skin, ajnabiyatan am mahraman, whether the woman that he touched, for example, is ajnabiya, non-mahram or mahram, then what is the ruling? The ruling is the wudu is still valid, because these are all doubt, and doubt does not have effect on the ruling of ablution. So this is number 3. Then the author mentioned number 4, masu farjil adami bi batinil kaf, touching of the private parts of the human. So touching the private parts of animals does not invalidate the wudu. So here he's speaking about touching the private parts of human beings. Bi batinil kaf, batinil kaf this part. This is called batin. This is zahir. This batinil kaf. So if a person touch any private part, skin to skin, the wudu becomes invalidated, regardless whether his private part or the private parts of others, or whether the private parts of children or adults. وَالْأَصَابِعِ خَاصَةً يعني بباطن الكاف here وَالْأَصَابِعِ, yeah, including any of the asabi here. وَلَوْ سَهْوًا, even any if he does not any intentionally. أو بلا shahwa, even if he does any, there is no shahwa, there is no sexual arousal. Regardless, any the wudu becomes invalid. Qubulan أو duburan, whether it is the front any private part or the back any private part or the anus, all these any invalidates any the wudu. Zakaran أو unsa, whether a man touches a man or a man touches a woman or woman and he touches woman. Min nafsihi أو غيره, from himself any or touching others. Walau min mayyit, and even he touch any dead body, touch any the private part of the dead body, it's haram. If a person is bathing any the dead body, it is haram any to touch skin to skin any other private parts. If he does so, then the wudu becomes invalid. Wa tiflin, yani an infant, thus the wudu becomes invalid, and this thing any that mothers any have to take note that if you are washing your babies, and if you wash any of their private parts with your bare hands, then your wudu becomes invalid, even though it's your own child. Even though, yeah, your own child, and the fact that you touch his private part or her private part, the wudu becomes invalid. Unless if a person use any the glove, the plastic gloves, then the wudu is still valid because there's no touching. Wa mahallul jab any na'uzubillah min dhalik, if a person doesn't have any private parts, so the part anywhere the private part it used to be, that is mahallul jab. If a person touches it, the wudu becomes invalid. Wa iniktasa jildan, even when there is what you call it, after some time there is a skin that layer it. If a person private part was cut off, the part anywhere the private part was there, the wudu becomes invalidated, even though there is a skin that form after it. Or ashal, if the private part doesn't function in ashal, the wudu still becomes invalidated. Walau maqtu'an wa biyadin shalla, even though the private part was cut off, or he touches the private part with what you call it, a hand that is paralyzed. Earlier he mentioned if the private part is paralyzed, the penis for example is paralyzed, the wudu still becomes invalidated if there is any touching. Now he says that if he touch with the hand that is paralyzed, does the wudu becomes invalid? Yes, the wudu becomes invalid. La farji bahima, that's what I mentioned. The private part of animals does not invalidate. If a person touch the private part of the horse, private part of the cow, does the wudu becomes invalid? No. The wudu does not become invalidated. Wala bi ru'usil asabi'. Ru'usil asabi' is this part. This is ru'us al asabi'. So if a person touch private part with the ru'us, this part, it does not invalidate the wudu. Wa harf al kaf, harf is here, this part. So that is why some scholars mention that when we do this, so the part that touches is the batinul kaf. But here, the wudu does not becomes invalidated. This is not part of the kaf. So this is not considered to be mas. Tamam? So if a person touch the private part like this, so the wudu is still valid. The wudu is still valid. So last time I remember there is a joke. Some teachers used to ask that if a person urinate but he holds his private part like this, does the wudu becomes invalid? Some students say that since he's holding his private part like this, the wudu is still valid. But he forgot that this person is urinating. So actually the wudu is not valid, not because of touching, but because of urinating. So this is kind like a joke question. Because some people, when they don't pay attention, they thought that they focus on this thing. Because when the teacher mentioned hold like this, so they thought that this does not invalidate the wudu because you are touching by the harf. But in reality, it invalidates because of urinating. Then he mentioned wala yanqudu qai. Vomiting does not invalidate wudu. Wa fasdin, bloodletting does not invalidate wudu. Ru'af, yani blood that comes out any from the nose is called ru'af. Wa qahqahatu musalli. If a person any while in praying and he laughs out loud, it does not any invalidate any the wudu. Wa aklu lahmi jazur, eating any camel meat does not invalidate any the wudu. Wa ghayru dhalik. For those any having the book, just put a note that all these things any we have differences any amongst any the ulama. That's why the author mentioned here. Number one, any with regard to vomiting, bloodletting, blood any flowing any from the nose, laughing loudly any in prayers, eating camel meat. These 5 situations we have differences any amongst the 4 schools any of thought, because any we have hadith any on this. But in the Mazhab al-Imam Shafi'i, all this does not invalidate the ablution. So I hope any it is clear, inshallah ta'ala. So now any we go on any to the next part. The author any mentioned ashakku fil hadasi awil wudu. A person is in doubt any with regard any to whether he has wudu or no wudu. But before that any we have completed the 4 reasons any of nullification any of wudu. So number 1, we spoke about anything that comes out any from the private parts, the front and back. Number 2, loss of consciousness, including sleeping, except that sleeping any we have to take into consideration whether a person any is firm any on the back is firm any on the ground or not any firm, and we take into consideration any the point when he wakes up any from his sleep. If you wake up any in a way that his situation is firm, then any we conclude that his wudu is valid, even though any he changes any position any after that. So it doesn't any give effect. The effect any that it will give any when he wakes up, and if his position changes, then only any the wudu any becomes invalidated. And then any we spoke about number 3, touching any of the opposite sex, skin to skin. And likewise, number 4, we spoke any about touching any the private part, skin to skin, of the opposite any gender, and likewise any own any private parts. So these are the 4 things that nullify the ablution. So if you memorize any of these 4 things, then khalas, it becomes easy. You know whether you have wudu or does not have wudu. So anything that is out any of these 4 situations, it does not invalidate your ablution. Now any the author any is going any to speak any about what happens any if a person is in doubt whether he has ablution or no ablution. He is in doubt. So we mentioned any that doubt any doesn't give effect on the ruling. So he mentioned وَمَنْ تَيَقَّنَ حَدَثًا وَشَكَّ فِي ارْتِفَاعِهِ فَهُوَ مُحْدِثٌ. A person any he is convinced based any on yaqeen that he is in a state of hadas, no wudu, but he has doubt. He has doubt any on when any does this what you call it, this nullification any happens. Yani he is certain any that he doesn't have any wudu, but at the same time any he said that there is a possibility that I take wudu, but he is in doubt. So now any we say that he does not have wudu, because now any he is convinced, he has any the conviction that he has no wudu. So as though any we are saying that his conviction that he has no wudu and the possibility any of having wudu, if that clash, so we take any yaqeen. So we throw away any the doubt, because he is doubtful any whether he has ablution, but he is convinced that he has no ablution. So which is any stronger? He has no ablution. وَمَنْ تَيَقَّنَ طُهْرًا وَشَكَّ فِي ارْتِفَاعِهِ فَهُوَ مُتَطَهِّرٌ. And this is the opposite. A person and he is convinced that he has wudu, but he has doubt, and maybe any I did something that makes any my wudu becomes invalid. So what do we say to him? We say he has any wudu. Why? Any because it is based on conviction. So he is doubtful any with regard any to if he has done something that invalidate any the ablution. So let me give you an example any simple any example. In this any situation, a lot of people any ask in this question. For example, he said that I am convinced that at 3 p.m. earlier I take wudu. I mean, I went to the masjid. I took my wudu at 3 p.m. Now, for example, and it's 5 p.m. Now, and it's 5 p.m. So he wants to pray his Asr prayers. But he knows that 3 p.m. and he took ablution. Yaqeen, yani based on conviction. And he remember yani he takes wudu at the masjid. Now, and he wants to pray the Asr prayers. But he is doubtful. Between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m., did I do anything that invalidate any my wudu? For example, when he walks in the street, he do his errands. There is a possibility, that there is skin to skin any contact with the opposite gender, for example, or anything that did he go any to the toilet? So he is doubtful any as to whether his ablution any becomes any invalidated. So in this situation, we say his wudu is still available because he is convinced any that he took wudu at 3 p.m. But he is doubtful any whether the wudu any that he takes becomes any invalidated. So the ruling any is that he has ablution. Wallahu a'lam bis-shawab. Because any of time any we stop here. Inshallah next week any we will continue any from here any inshallah. So now any we'll take in any the questions. Was it? Is it? Okay. You're going to inform them? So we have any first question here. Assalamualaikum Waalaikumsalam. Can you repeat any from the number 4? Biar inshallah the recording stop even the video. You were explaining something any with your hands. Yet inshallah. So let us go back into the book any again. So this is number 4. The author any when he said I think it's okay. So it begins any wa mahallu jab wa iniktasal jildan aw ashal walau maqtu'an wa biyadin inshallah. So basically what the author is saying, these are the few situations that if a person any touch any the private part, if a person any touch any the private part and his hand is paralyzed, this is the meaning of yad shalla. So if he touch any his private part, for example, with his hand, and his hand is paralyzed, we know that hands any that are paralyzed, there is no feelings. Does this any invalidate any the wudu? Yes, this invalidate any the wudu. So this is the situation. Another situation he mentioned that if the private part is cut off, the place anywhere the private part was cut off, if he touches it, does it invalidate the wudu? Yes, it invalidates the wudu. So even if the hands is paralyzed, it invalidates the wudu. And then after that he mentioned walau maqtu'an, if the private part was cut and he touches the private part, does this invalidate the wudu? Yes, and it invalidates the wudu. Wa biyadin inshallah. And what you call it, to touch the private part with, as what I mentioned, the yad inshallah. Before it he speaks about if the private part is paralyzed. So an example will be that his private part is paralyzed. What is the meaning private part is paralyzed? Yani his private part does not function. So there are cases na'uzubillah min zalik that people suffer from sicknesses that their penis does not function. So it is paralyzed. So touching this kind of penis, does this invalidate the wudu? Yes, it invalidated wudu. So with regard to paralyzed, there are two situations. The first one, he speaks about private part that is paralyzed. This is where he mentioned. He said, "Aw ashal." Ashal here refers to the private part that is paralyzed. The wudu becomes invalid. Then he mentioned, "Wabiyadin shalla." Yani touching the private part, the hand is paralyzed. So can you see the difference? The first situation is he speaks about the private part that is paralyzed. The second situation is the hand is paralyzed. Both situations, the wudu becomes invalid, regardless whether the private part is paralyzed or the hand is paralyzed. So I hope it is clear, inshallah ta'ala. It covers. Afwan. So I hope I covered the part where the video was off. The second question is asking, you mentioned Salat Jumat and raising the legs. What if at any time a person uses the habwa and falls asleep? Wudu is invalid. If a person uses the habwa, anyway the habwa is this, the person ties his legs around like this. You see, using the habwa, it doesn't mean that the back is not firm on the ground. It depends on how he uses the habwa. If he raises the leg too high, then now he's not mumakkin. If he sleeps in that position, the wudu becomes invalid. So based on what we mentioned, how do we ascertain? We ascertain at the point when he wakes up. At the point when he wakes up and he look at himself, if he raises his legs too high, then khalas, we say the wudu becomes invalid. But if he uses the habwa and the leg is down, because habwa you can control your feet. If I have habwa, I can show you. But ala kulli hal, it depends on how high you raise your feet. So, one more time. So I hope it is clear. So at the point when you wake up from your sleep, then you ascertain whether your wudu becomes invalid. So the question is asking, what if at any time a person uses a habwa and falls asleep, wudu is invalid. So it depends. It depends on how you use the habwa. Does sleeping on a reclining chair invalidates my wudu? This is exactly what the author mentioned. If you see, the author speaks about this. Even if a person is reclining, it depends on the firmness of his back and the ground. If it's in a situation where no wind can come out, then the wudu is still valid. The wudu is still valid. So reclining doesn't mean that if a person sleeps while reclining, that we say there is no mumakkin, there's no tamkin. There is tamkin. Unless if you recline too much, that the pressure now is on the body and not on his back, then the wudu becomes invalid. Regarding sleepiness, sometimes after salat when I lie down and I'm in state of sleepiness, I can still hear voices like my wife reading the Quran. But when I finally snap out of it, my wife said I was already snoring. Is my wudu still valid now and you are sleeping? This is not sleepiness. If you are snoring, this is not any sleepiness. It's khalas, and we say you are sleeping. So your wudu is not valid. What is the ruling of invalidation of wudu by touching doing umrah? So umrah, you see, we do taqlid to other madhab. In the madhab al-Imam Shafi'i, our wudu become invalidated. But usually, what we do in umrah, we follow the madhab of Maliki madhab that says that the wudu is still valid unless they have shahwa, or we follow the Hanafi madhab, easier. The easiest madhab is Hanafi madhab, and with regards to tawaf, because they are saying that wudu is still valid even though there is touching, even though there is shahwa. The easiest madhab with regard to this is the Hanafi madhab. So usually personally for me, I do taqlid on the Hanafi madhab, and with regard to tawaf. So that is permissible, that we follow the opinion of other madhab because of difficulty. If you follow the madhab Imam Shafi, high possibility your tawaf cannot finish. Especially if they when the mataf is packed with people. So this is an exception. Now we take the opinion of other scholars. Does touching mother-in-law invalidate wudu of a man? No. Mother-in-law any is our mahram. Huh? Can you marry your mother-in-law? Always ask this question. Can we marry this person? Can we marry our mother-in-law? Mother-in-law, you cannot marry the mother-in-law. And once any we marry a woman, the mother any becomes any our mahram. The mother becomes any our mahram. So touching any the mother-in-law does not invalidate the wudu. But touching our wife any invalidates any wudu. Because our wife any we can marry her and we are in a marriage any with her. So that is how our wudu any becomes invalidated. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. If a husband accidentally touches his wife but is uncertain if the nails or skin to skin, is the wudu still valid? It is exactly what the author mentioned just now. The wudu is still valid because of doubt. If you are doubtful whether you touch or don't touch, whether you touch the hair or the skin or the nails, your wudu is still valid. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Can you explain the passage wala bi ru'usil asabi' wa ma bainahuma wa harful kaf? Yani ru'usul asabi' is this part. This is a ru'us. So if a person touch the private part like this by the ru'usul asabi', does it validate any of the wudu? Makes the wudu invalidated? No. This is not part of the kaf. What invalidates any of the wudu is touching the private part like this. This is any when you do this part of the kaf. But if you touch like this or like this, this is the harf any of the fingers. It does not invalidate the wudu. Oh, this again the video when it was cut. So thank you Annie for alerting us. Sometimes any interim, this is any the situation. Sometimes any when the electricity cut off and it comes in, there is any delay. But I hope I have covered all the parts that was cut off. So going back into the part that was cut off. So I hope it is clear inshallah. I spoke about what iniktasa jildan, if the private part was cut off. And the person touched the part of where the private part was, the wudu becomes invalidated. Or ashal, this is what we mentioned. Paralyzed, whether paralyzed of the private part or the hand that is paralyzed that touches it. La farja bahima, then the author mentioned la farja bahima with regard to animals, private parts of animals. The what you call it, the wudu is still valid. If a person touches the private parts of animals. Wala bi ru'usil asabi wa ma bainahuma wa harfil kaf. This is what I mentioned earlier. This does not invalidate any of the wudu, by the end of the asabi and the sides of the fingers. Then he mentioned wa yantaqidu khay'un wa fasdun wa ra'afun wa qahqahatu musalli wa aklu lahmi jazur. All these things I believe what you call it is clear. Vomiting does not invalidate wudu. Bloodletting, blood that comes out from the nose. Laughing in prayer. Eating camel meat. All this does not nullify the ablution. And I mentioned that this is in the Shafi'i Madhhab because there are differences in other Madhhab with regard to this. Wallahu a'lam bis-shawab. Rabbana taqabbal du'ana innaka antas sami'ul 'alim wa tub 'alaina innaka antat tawwabur rahim. واختم بالصالحات أعمالنا وأجرنا الله يكرم بفضل سبحان ربك بالعزة عما يصفون. الحمد لله رب العالمين. تقبل الله منكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.